Jai Baba. Let's start at the beginning. I was an only child, and my mother was 30 when I was born, which was old for those times in 1939. And I was sort of she was my companion. I didn't fit in with other kids. I didn't really have playmates. I remember one of Mother's friends said to me, wouldn't you like a brother and sister? And I said, no, I'd have to share my ice cream with them. So I started off life as selfish. And so when Mother became a Rosicrucian, and that's for those of you who are not familiar with what Rosicrucians are, philosophical, spiritual thing that started off in the pharaonic area of the ancient Egyptians. And they believe it came from the Atlanteans before it went under. Anyway, they obviously told us all about reincarnation, so I was raised knowing about reincarnation. 1952, Mother heard about Frances Brabazon, one of her friends, because she had been searching all the time, looking for something. Actually, she'd gone as high as you can go with the Rosicrucians, which was, I think, to the 7th level. That's interesting, 7th. Anyway, they said, now you have to go out and find your own master. And she said, 1952, Australia, I'm going to find a living master. Hello? Well then, suddenly, as Baba says, when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. And I think people long before Baba said that. Yeah, he was actually listening to me. See, you threw me right off track.
And people will appear.
Someone's looking for a master.
Oh yes, so she heard, a friend told Mum about Frances Brabazon, who had just come back from the States and met a man that he was going around saying was God. And Mum said, well, that's pretty radical, but I'm ready to believe that. I will take the measure of this man, Frances Brabazon, and then see what has to say. Mum went to the meeting. I didn't go to that first one. Mother went to that one. And she came back and she was completely convinced this man, Avatar Meher Baba, definitely was God. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And she told me, and I don't remember the time of her telling me, but I also accepted it completely. And we were both very matter-of-fact people. We weren't all the crying and emotional kind of things. Very matter-of-fact, yeah, he's God, okay? So, that was in 1952. Then I actually started going to Frances's meetings. And what is rather funny, when you see movies of Frances Brabazon in India, after he became one of Baba's Mandali, he is so self-effacing, it's unbelievable. He sees the camera, comes near him, he sort of bows out backwards as fast as he can. Not so in Australia in 1952. He was an absolute martinet. And he'd hold these meetings, and they weren't open to the general public. You had to have expressed an interest in Meher Baba before you could go to his meetings. And then if somebody asked some kind of an esoteric question, he'd think, that's a very stupid question. You want to know the answer to that? Go down the street to the Theosophical Society. We're here to talk about Avatar Meher Baba. Whoa. So nobody really argued with Frances at all. And in those days, we didn't have any photos, and there were very, very few books. I think God-Man was it. But I don't think I read that. So I was 12 when I first heard about Baba. And as I said, just totally accepted him. 1956, Baba was coming to Australia, and Frances wanted to build a special house for him to be in. So every Saturday morning, a few of Brabazon's selected few, who were worthy of it, could go and help build this place for Baba in Beacons Hill. And I used to go down there too. Actually, because I was 16 at the time, I used to babysit Michael LePage, if you can figure that out. So, that was fun. But I wasn't really gung-ho on the whole thing. But when Baba came, and I think it was in June of 1956, I wasn't all that anxious to go down and meet him. I had a boyfriend, and didn't want to take time away from my social life. And Mother said, "Oh, please, darling, just for me, please come and just meet him once." I said, "Oh, all right, So I went down there, and I'm not sure if the first time we saw him was in our private session, because I remember seeing him afterwards in a group. But the way the room was set up, we all had our individual moments alone with Baba. There was 2 doors this side of the room, and Baba was sitting on a couch back there. So this is what I remember incredibly clearly. I'm standing in the doorway. Mother is standing there. I'm standing here. Now, Mum's looking at Baba. I'm not even trying to get a first glimpse of Baba. I'm looking at Mum. She's got tears in her eyes. So I thought, oh my God, she's getting emotional about this. You know, he's God, so what? But anyway, she said, Baba, this is my daughter, Dina. And so I imagine I turned towards Baba, went over there, got an embrace, had a few words to say with him. God knows what he said with me, because he has completely erased my memory of that meeting. And then I went out. I remember standing outside with the rest of the group of Australians and watching Baba talking to the crowd. Now, Erich is standing beside him. Nobody's looking at Erich. Everybody, including me, is looking at Baba. And, you know, his eyes sparkling and hands going like this and looking over and talking like this, and the words are coming out of Erich's mouth. And I remember thinking, you don't really notice that he's not speaking, because he is so lively, you know? And so I do remember that clearly. But the strange thing is, I did not remember that I had forgotten my meeting with Baba until I started coming to the Baba Center here, the old one on Santa Monica Boulevard. And one of the meetings I went to, it was Ray Lee, Dick Nimler, a couple of other people talking about how they came to Baba. And it was all these vivid dreams and visions and everything like that. And I said, oh gosh, I've never had a dream of Baba. And they look at me like, hello, you met him? I said, yeah, but I don't remember that. Because I had just discovered before that meeting, when they said, oh, you met Baba. Oh, what was it like? And I said, oh, it was, you know, I don't know. I don't have a clue. And I suddenly realized that it was completely erased from my memory. Now, this is definitely Baba, because when I can remember looking at Mother with tears in her eyes and knowing the words that I spoke, and then knowing the words that I thought at least, when he was outside, gee, how come I don't remember meeting him? I don't remember the embrace. First of all, I used to get upset about that, you know, since I started going to the Baba Center. And I remember him saying he wants to instill longing in us. And so I thought, okay, maybe that's what I'm supposed to do, long to remember it. After a while, I got a bit pissed off at that. No, you don't want me to remember it? Okay, I won't. And then suddenly the thought came to me, you will remember just at the moment of dropping your body. And that really satisfied me. I mean, what nicer thing is you're on your way out, and I hope you kids will be there saying Baba, Baba, Baba as I am passing, that I will remember being embraced by him. You'll know I remembered by the beatific smile on my face. And then, I'll be gone. Hopefully when I'm 93, the same as Mum, 92. Okay, our father, who was a devout Roman Catholic, and when we were going to the Rosicrucians, he used to say, oh, you're off to the Rusty Bugles again, are you? Well, when we took up with MeherBaba, guess what he used to call us? Oh, you're going off to see the barbarians, are you? So when Baba was leaving Sydney, he told everybody that you can bring whoever you want to the airport to say goodbye to me. Because previously to that, it had to be someone who really either was a Baba lover or really wanted to meet him. So Mum said, okay, Stan, would you like to go and meet Baba? Oh, yeah. And Mum could just see the look on his face. This is going to be, Dad was an alcoholic. So he is going to dine out at the pub on this story for years to come. Guess who I met this afternoon? God. So he gets all dressed up in his Sunday best, and Dad did look very dapper when he got dressed up. So they go to the airport, Barbara's coming towards us, and Mum and Dad are standing there, and Mother says, Barbara, this is my husband Stan. Dad goes, how do you do, Barbara? And sticks his hand out for a firm handshake, and Barbara gets his hand and gives him a firm handshake and says, very happy to meet you, Stan, through Erich. So on the way back home, in the car, I wasn't with them, Mum notices that Dad's very quiet. And she sort of sneaks a look over at him, and he's got his Sunday church look on his face. And she says, so, what do you think of Baba? He stops for a while and he said, he's a very holy man. So, Baba did actually get through to him. Okay, then Baba came back in 1958 and wanted to come to a different state where it was warmer, so Francis bought a place in Queensland, and everybody was down in Sydney waiting to be called. With Francis, you just didn't go up and say, oh, here, I'll help you build. You waited until you were called. Well, Mum told me that he used to look on Lorna Rouse as his Mehera and Mother as his money. Mother was a plumber, electrician, painter, she could, handyman, she could do anything. So Francis called her up to help build Avatar's abode. And Baba was going to be there for a week. This was in 1958, so I was 17 at the time. Right? 39? Whatever. You figure it out yourself.
19.
19.
19?
Depending on
Depending on
No.
what month he came.
He came in August. It was just after my birthday. Oh. Okay. 58. Yeah, that's right. So Mother said, darling, Francis, Baba is going to be here for a week. And he said you could come on up. Will you come? I said, oh, Mum, I met him once already, you know, it's okay. Besides that, I didn't want to leave my boyfriend for a whole week. I mean, see God again, I mean, you know, that wasn't really necessary. Seen him once, you know, that was it. So, kind of different to what everybody else says. They fell in floods of tears, they fainted, etc., etc. Anyway, so Baba goes back. I must tell you about Robin very briefly, because further on I start calling her my sister, and I've already told you I'm an only child. I knew Robin Rogers at Skeggs, the school I went to. She was in a grade above me, and so it was usually, Dina Snow, stop running in the corridor. Dina Snow, stop talking in assembly. Yeah. I met her after we'd both left school. I met her in the street one time, and I said, oh, hi, Robin, how are you? And she said, not good. My mother just died, and I don't like the people I'm living with. And she didn't have a father. I said, oh, come live with us. Now, I didn't ask Mother. I didn't know Robin really all that well. But come live with us. Like, hello, did Baba have something to do with this, perhaps? So I come home and I said, Mum, Robin Rogers, you remember Robin Rogers? Well, she's going to come live with us. Okay. Mum wasn't too terribly happy about that to begin with. But I found a very interesting thing. Robin had her own connection with Baba. Her mother died of polycystic kidneys when Robin was 15, and Robin inherited them, unfortunately. And her doctor was Dr. Lee. Now, Dr. Lee was married to Francis Lee, who was a Baba lover and a good friend of Mother's. So Francis knew Robin through her doctor, and because they knew that Robin's mother was not long for this world. She said, you know, there's a very spiritual, holy man, this is in 1956, in Beacons Hill. Would you come with me and I'll introduce him? Well, Robin was all for going, you know, why not, you know, pop along. But her mother, who was a little neurotic, said, no way are you going down to meet one of these charlatans. So Robin didn't go get to see Baba. But Baba never let Robin out of his sight or mind. Oh dear, I enlarged the points, but I forgot to enlarge these. You could look them afterwards. But he always says, my love, my love, blessings to you, Dina, Jerry, children, and Robin. And Robin was always, that's telegrams from Baba, Robin was always mentioned. So Baba very definitely had his nazar on Robin. Okay, this is 1958. Baba has gone back. Francis, there's the Spanish company in Australia, Lucillo y su baile español. He was touring the country and he was in Sydney. Now Francis knew that Baba loved flamenco. He told Mother, take Dina to see this show. Now whether Francis was in on the whole thing, I don't know what Baba had said to him, or whether Francis intuited that Baba would like me to go see the show, I don't know. But I went there, and I had been a ballet dancer for about 12 years. I had never even heard of flamenco. I saw this, I was so blown away. I said, my God, this is fantastic. I've got to tell Robin, because she was busy that night. The next night, Robin and I went. She fell in love with them too. There was a company of about 35 dancers. We hawked everything we possibly could to buy front row seats for the next month.
Wow.
And we went, but we weren't content with just being fans. We had to get to meet them. So we went backstage. Robin spoke fluent French, so she would help them with secretarial duties. So we got to really, really, really know them. I still have the dress, which my daughter wore for a while until she decided she was too old for it, that I bought for the Christmas party in 1959 to go to Lucilio's party. Can't quite fit in it now, but it's a lovely dress, isn't it, darling?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we farewelled Lucilio at the wharf in January, and we said to him, we will meet you in May in Madrid. And they go, oh yes, of course, yes. We left the ship, we went and got our shots. Now in Australia, nobody had shots until you were leaving the country. So we got typhoid, tetanus, yellow fever, everything, smallpox, chickenpox, everything. Both arms, they were out like this. We took 3 jobs. We waited tables we had the office job 9 to 5, 5:30 to 8:30 in a sort of a workers' hash house restaurant. And then 9 until 2 a.m. in a coffee shop in King's Cross. And in 3 months, we had the money. Now, all of our friends who were the jazz band people, because I was into traditional jazz band, they all said, oh, who are you kidding? You're not going to go. You'll never get the money to go to Spain, for heaven's sakes. In Australia in 1959, the idea was you left high school, you worked for about 3 years, you got a job, you saved the money at least, you went overseas, hitchhiked around Europe, then came back home, got married, settled down around 25 or so. That was saving for 3 or 4 years. That was not Robin's and my MO. We did it in 3 months. But, and this is to be said to Mother's enormous credit, Barbara probably influenced her quite a bit, we left with no return fare, one way, and I had 20 pounds left over. There was no way I would have let my daughter out of my sight overseas with 20 pounds to spare. I mean, this is, like maybe $40 or $50 in those days. So when we got on board ship, we slept for the first week. We were so dead tired. We were farewelled by 2 jazz bands, so there were other kids on the ship who wanted to know who the heck were these 2 girls that had 2 jazz bands farewelling them. Anyway, we finally made an appearance, was wildly greeted by this bunch of Jewish kids who were immigrating to work on kibbutzes in Israel. And when we got off the ship in Naples, because that was as far as we could afford, the ship was going on to London, but we couldn't afford any further, so we got off at Naples. And the guys said, well, hitchhike, because we found out that the train fare was 20 pounds, and that was all the money we had in the world. So they said, well, hitchhike. We were so naive, we didn't know what hitchhiking was. They said, you stand on the road and you go like that. Oh, okay. So we were on the road and we did that. Hitchhiked from Naples up through, we spent a week in Rome, Firenze, didn't get to see Venezia at that time, but Genoa. Our luck was phenomenal. We would get to each place a day or 2 ahead of the other 6 guys. I think they had 1 girl with them, but they were mostly all guys. And this happened all through France too, because we hitchhiked along the Riviera, up the coast of Italy, along the Riviera, and down the coast of Spain, and then over to Madrid. I wrote to Mother, and I said, we must have some crazy twisted saint watching out over us. Our luck has been phenomenal. We get out of one car, we look around, and, oh, I like that one over there. And they go, And this is 1959 in Europe. It was perfectly safe to hitchhike all over the place.
And you were young and beautiful.
Well, young anyway. You can see what we look like there. And Mother wrote back and said, darling, did it occur to you that it could be Meherbaba? Oh, yeah, Unimpressed? No, thank you, Baba, nothing, just I took, and took. And boy, is he getting back now. I give and I give and I give. Okay, we arrive in Madrid 3 months after we left. We got there in, we left the 4th of May, so we got there at the end of May or early June. And Lucilio was stunned when we walked into his studio. And he said, oh, but you've just come at the wrong time. Tomorrow we're leaving to go for the International Eisteddfod at Llangollen in Wales. That's a 4-day Eisteddfod. And then we're doing a tour of one-night stands all over France. So let us get you set up in a pension, which is living a room arrangement in Spain, in Europe anyway, and teach you to be studying with. So then they got on their chartered bus the next day. We're waving them a fond farewell. The bus pulls around out the street. We look at each other and go, let's. We race back to pension, threw some things in a knapsack. Now in Spain in '59, you could not hitchhike. It was against the law. So we jumped the train. And because we didn't have any money, we never had money, we couldn't buy tickets. So every time we saw the ticket collector, which always walked up and down the corridors, we would hide in the toilets and be going, horrible noises. And so they just sort of walked right on by. So we got over the border, and then we started hitchhiking again. Oh, it was so good to us, it was unbelievable. One of the rides we got was a traveling salesman, and he always had a tent that he pitched. So he let us sleep in the tent while he spent the night curled up in his car. Another night, a gentleman took us home to his place. We were not trepidatious about that at all. He took us home, gave us his bedroom, and he pointed out, there's a lock on the door here. You girls might feel safer if you lock the door. I mean, how sweet and considerate. And of course gave us a hot bath and a meal and things. Then when we got to London, I was so surly. I like to think I have mellowed a bit, but we got to London. Well, I like to think. Don't like the sound of that laughter. You ought to have seen me 40 years ago. Yes, that was nasty. I remember locking my son out the back door because he wouldn't stop crying when he was only 18 months old. He bears the scars for life. So you can come back in when you stop crying. I really was mean. But we always had to, every time we hitchhiked backwards and forwards between London and Madrid, we had to have enough money for the ferry. We had to pay for that. Okay, so we arrived to London about 11 o'clock at night. In those days, London rolled up the sidewalks at 10 o'clock at night. There was nothing open, nothing running, and I'm standing there in the street with a scowl on my face, and this woman comes by and she says, what's the matter, girls? You look unhappy. I said, everything's closed and we've got nowhere to sleep the night. She said, well, why don't you come home with us? I'll toss my boys out of their bed. They can sleep on the floor. You can sleep on your bed, on their beds. I probably said, thank you. Anyway, that was London. Then we started hitchhiking back up to Wales. We crossed the border, got into Wales. Again, a beautiful person took us to their house, kicked their sons again out of their beds, gave us their beds. Such was our phenomenal luck, thank you, Baba, to which I gave no thanks at the time. In getting there, we arrived before Lucilio did. And Lucilio had a chartered bus the entire way.
Wow.
So we're standing, the Eisteddfod was under big tents outside in a big area, grassy area. We're standing at the entrance as their bus pulls up. They absolutely cannot believe it. In those days, nobody caught planes, and they knew we didn't have any money for a plane ticket anyway. How did it? I saw them in Madrid, and a week later they're here. It might not have even been a week later. So they went into the tent, and Lucilio, being no dummy, told the press. So we're inside, being reunited with all the members of the dance team that we had absolutely fell in love with. And when we come out, we are surrounded by paparazzi. You will later on get to see what the pictures look like. We were front page on about 6 newspapers. And it sure got Lucilio. I mean, girls with a crush travel 13,000 miles. A wink, olé, and the 2-girl fan club was away. I mean, this was before there were groupies. They just didn't do that sort of thing. So, then we went on the tour of France, one-night stands all over the place, and again, Baba did not desert us, but he got no thanks. Every time the bus would pull up to a new town, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the dancers fanned out. They had to find a pension for the night, then they would check in, they would go to the theatre, they would have a rehearsal, they would go to dinner, and then they would do the show. Well, it was sometimes very hard for this troop of 35 to find in these little country towns sufficient lodgings. It so happened that Robin and I always did. It was always the first place we went to, and we made a beeline to it. How we did it, except to say that Baba was sort of pulling the string and pulling us along, I don't know. But after a while, the dancers caught on. They said, come on, follow Dina and Robin. So it was like Pied Piper. We're leading off with this 35 troop of dancers and behind us. But geez, did we ever thank him? No. Now in '59, when Australians went overseas and they made news back in Australia too. So one of these things was in the Australian magazines, and so this happened quite a bit of what Dina and Robin were doing overseas. You know, the travels of Dina and Robin. Anyway, okay, the month in Paris. That was fabulous month we had in Paris. That didn't continue right on after that. I think I've lost my dates a bit, but it doesn't matter. We had got rather good at stealing. We started off with stealing food because we had no money. When we were hitchhiking around France, because every time we ran out of money, back in Spain, then we'd go hitchhike back to Madrid, to London, earn some more money, working 2 jobs at a time, and then go back to Madrid and continue studying. And we needed to eat, so we would steal the food. And we got very good at that. But then we progressed. We were on the West Bank in Paris, and it was an interesting shop with all sorts of strange things in it. We saw this skull that had a red light inside it, and the red light was shining out of the eye holes, the sockets. We thought, wouldn't that be great if we ever get our own flat? So I'm busy stuffing this in a big bag I'd got that wasn't really quite big enough for it, and Robin, who spoke the fluent French, was busy chatting up the store person, and I'm desperately trying to stick the skull in the bag. Well, we did get it in the bag anyway, so we got out. Carry on to, we went back and forth. Yeah. Baba by this time had enough of us. He thought, okay, it's time you girls just sort of towed the line a little. So, we were in a supermarket in London. I was supposed to be the lookout, and Robin was the lifter. We took half a pound of tea, 1 jar of jam, and I think it was a cake of soap or toothpaste, I can't remember which. Put it in the bag and walked out of the store. When we got out of the store, this gentleman comes up and says, excuse me, and we sort of stepped aside. He said, you girls have something in your bag that you have not paid for. I go, oh, hell. Robin starts to say, absolutely not. We bought that here at lunchtime. We just came in. There wasn't anything we wanted to buy now, so we left. On and on and on and on and on. And I'm just saying, Finally, he says, you girls have added a nasty bit of lying to petty thievery. I am calling the police and having you arrested to teach you a lesson. Well, he had no idea what kind of a lesson he was teaching us. When the arresting sergeant came down, introduced herself as Sergeant Baha. I get the message. No more will I steal, never no more. Well, we were remanded into custody. We were fingerprinted and booked, but then they let us out on our own recognizance. The court date was set for about a week later or something, and we went there, and the judge, we had an exemplary record. We'd never done anything like this before that we had been caught at, so he let us go. I think he might have given us a fine, or it might have been just a warning, because he knew we had hardly any money. Anyway, we're coming out of the courthouse, and this photographer leaps out of the bushes right in front of me, flashes a big bulb in my eyes, and I go, ah! The next Sunday's newspaper in Australia, Mother is reading the newspaper in bed. Dad brings it into her. She opens it up because it was rolled up. There is her daughter, front page, going, with the heading, Dina Snow yells at photographers or screams at photographers. Needless to say, I did not save that picture. You won't find it up here. Poor Mother, how embarrassing. But I had no idea it was going to appear in the Australian papers. Barbara was really hammering home the lesson, do not steal. Okay. Round about this time, while we're hitchhiking everywhere, Barbara wrote to Mother and said, you are to tell me wherever the girls are at all times. I want you to write to me and tell me every time they move. Well, Mum was sending off a letter a week, so she was really happy about that, because often Barbara was in seclusion, you weren't allowed to write to him, certainly not even see him. But Mother had permission to write all these letters saying they're now in Paris, they're now in Nice, they're now here, they're now there, etc. So, well, we settled down in Madrid, and I did belly dance classes in a nightclub at night to pay for my flamenco lessons in the daytime. We have a photo of that. Wish I looked like that now, but I was only 21. That was posted on the walls outside the nightclub to entice the guys to come on in and see what's down there. Well, can't wait, lovers, huh? In those days in Europe, you had to alternar. Alternar means you had to drink with the customers. And you had to ask them, buy me whiskey, honey? Which I hated doing, because I hated alcohol anyway, and they would only put the merest amount of scotch or champagne, that was the only two things you could drink, and fill the rest with ice water. But to me, it still tasted repulsive. Yes. But you had to do that in order to have your time on stage. But anyway, I was paid for that, so I paid for my classes. After a few months, we got good enough at the flamenco. Robbie could only take flamenco classes at night. But the strange thing is, Robbie was 5'9", had never taken ballet in her life, and when we first started, I'm up there, going like this, oh, I'm the ballet dancer, and he says, no, wrong, everything's wrong. In ballet, everything is soft. In flamenco, it hurts. And if it doesn't hurt, you're not doing it right. And then there was one time when you're supposed to stand up and shake your shoulders. Well, I've done belly dancing, so I'm like this. He says, las alfombras, no las pechas. The shoulders, not the boobs. So, it was hard learning to do the flamenco, but the funny thing is, Robin was so good at it. She had a fabulous sense of rhythm, and the Parvardigar, the stomping that you do, and the castanets, and the dying palmas. She was so much better than I could ever hope to be. And I didn't like that. Didn't like that at all. Okay, the mid-60s, we were good enough. Mostly what we were hired for was because we were foreigners, we had a passport, and we could drink, whereas the most Spanish girls couldn't. So it was a troupe of a lead male and female, and 4 dancers. Robin and I were 2 of them. So I facetiously wrote to Mother and said, hey, guess what? We're joining a dance company. We're going to tour the Middle East. If you can't contact us, if you don't hear from us for a while, write Care the White Slave Trade, Beirut. Dad got that letter. He says, you are on the next plane out to Madrid. Because this was in 1960 when white girls had been kidnapped all over Europe and sold into slavery, into harems and etc., etc. So, Mum gets on a plane, comes on over. The manager of the company, I think, was basically Arabic. He spoke French, English, Spanish, Arabic, of course, and I think he also spoke Hebrew. But his English wasn't all that good. So Mother comes up to him and she says, I will be wardrobe mistress. You don't have to pay me anything, just lodgings and travel expenses. Well, he didn't really like that idea at all. Mother said, either I come or my girls go. Oh, okay. We'd already had our costumes chosen. You can see we did a number of fancy dances. And we knew all the choreography. Everything was booked. So, he let Mother come along as wardrobe mistress. We drove to Marseille. We took the boat. Did I write down when we took that? Because I think I found I was looking at my passport. Yeah. New Year's Eve, 1961. We arrived on the ship in Marseille, and it appeared that everybody was sleeping down in the hold. Just little stretchers down there, men and women and probably even cattle, all down there. Mother looks at that, her hackles rise. My girls will not be sleeping down there. You children know what Mother could be like with her hackles rise. And Antonio, I think was the manager's name, he did not know the word angry, which seemed very strange because he would get very angry. He would say, Mrs. Snow, you are making me very nervous. But we ended up with a nice cabin for 3, and he and everybody else was down in the hold. We get to Cyprus. It's out of your system now, come on home. And I said, no, I'm in love with Jerry. I'm going to go over to Cyprus till that affair blows over, because I never believed in true love that went on forever. You know, you love somebody, then you fall out of love, and you love somebody, and you fall out of love. So I said, I'm going back to Cyprus until that blows over. And then my agent has got me set up with a tour of one-night stands all over Northern Africa, Marrakesh, Morocco, Tangiers. Mother nearly died. She saw she could not change my mind. She went back there. Robbie went to Athens, joined up with some dancers that she'd met there, and that was the beginning of it for Robin. She became a very famous, superb flamenco dancer. Absolutely superb. And Mum went on to England. Now, when she was in London, she was catching the boat back to Australia, and she wrote to Francis, because Francis, of course, was now he was one of the Mandali. She wrote to Francis and said, do you think Baba would let me, because Baba was in seclusion at the time, my ship is stopping at Bombay. Could I come and see Baba for a little while? And it was the blue aerograms. You know those blue aerograms? Everyone in the old days always used to use those. So Mum wrote that. Francis tucked it in his pocket here, went to Mandalay Hall for the usual meeting with Baba, and he bent over to Baba and it fell out of his pocket. Surprise, surprise. And Baba said, what's that? What's that? Francis said, oh, nothing. Tucked it back in his pocket. Baba said, what is it? Oh, it's just a letter from Diana. Push down further. Read it. And so, which was what Francis was planning on all along, I read it out, and Baba said, okay, tell her she can have 5 minutes if she gets here at such and such a time. I've forgotten what it was. The ship pulls in. Mother didn't see anybody on the docks, didn't want to get off the docks, so she'd wasted about 3 hours. It was Anavaz and Katie. Yeah, Anavaz and Katie and one of the men, Mandalay, I don't know who the man was. They had been waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, they thought to announce, Diana Snow, are you on the ship? So they came down. Because they were late, they made this huge dash in the pouring rain up to Baba. Mother was covered in mud, filth and everything. And they said, come on, you've got to come in to see Baba. And she said, I need to clean up, I look terrible. Come in now. So those 5 minutes stretched to 5 hours. So she had a wonderful time. She was the only one there. He had been in seclusion. He came out just for her. Well, it wasn't total seclusion because he was with the Mandali, but nobody else was allowed in. And Mum said, one time when they were sitting there in Mandali Hall with all the men around, she's just sort of looking at them all, and she looks at Pukar. Now, those of you who've seen the old photos, Pukar was a great big man with white sticking out hair, I guess. And she's thinking to herself, he looks like a big cuddly bear. Baba looks at Mum, immediately looks at Pukar and says, Pukar, what would you think of Diana as your wife? And of course, all the Mandali laugh like mad, and they're all looking at Mum. Pukar is blushing deep red, and so Mum knows there's some kind of a joke, what is going on? And one of them explains to her what Baba had said. She was mortified and realized again, you do not think thoughts in front of Baba, that you do not want him to know because he definitely reads minds. Okay. Now, I met Jerry in February of 1961. He asked me to marry him on my birthday in May of 61, and we got married in October of 61. Rush wedding. What is that?
We were just checking the dates.
You missed the next line, darling. You jumped it. 4 months later, I was pregnant. Yes. And I thought, I don't want a baby. I mean, I had never touched a baby in my life. I really didn't like kids. I mean, I really didn't. And I was definitely, hey, they know the truth. And they know how madly I love them now, so it's okay to say that. But I gotta tell you guys this, because this is where Baba entered into the picture again. I was very petulant and nasty when it looked like Michael was definitely hanging in there. I was now 4 months pregnant, and obviously I wasn't going to have a miscarriage, so I thought, well, he better be good-looking and intelligent, Baba, or I'll smother him. Look at Michael. He was reading at 18 months, gorgeous. The most beautiful kid, not only on the block, we were in Japan. Blonde hair, blue eyes. The Japanese just went gaga over him. Well, 1965, we are in Japan. Mum writes to me and says, darling, good news. Baba has just come out of seclusion and he said all his Western lovers can write to him. Whoopie bloody do. So I didn't. A couple of months later, I get another letter from Mother, and it says, Baba wants to know why you haven't written to him. Now, I'm wondering, what was my concept of God? I knew he was God, but when I read that letter, I remember thinking, wow, thousands of people all over the world are writing to him. How does he know I didn't? I guess I didn't have a very good idea of what God was. But this was Baba's hook again. I remember exactly where I was standing in relationship to the house. I was standing here, the outside wall was there, Jerry was standing here. He always read my mother's letters to me, or to us. He read the letter, and I'm standing there watching him, thinking my own thoughts, and suddenly I see tears are rolling down his face. What the hell is that? He became an instant Baba lover. On reading those words, Baba wants to know why you haven't written to him. That was the hook that Baba got Jerry with. And Jerry, having 172 IQ, being an extreme intellectual, got into the total intellectual part. Read God Speaks inside out, back to front, and upside down.
What did you think of that?
Oh, for God's sakes. Don't bother me with that. You do your own thing. I wrote to Baba, though. I did at least do that. Because, every now and then I would pay attention to him. And I remember the letter started out, Dear Baba, what does one say to God? I love that opening line. That was really cool. But I don't know what else I wrote. It was just a very short one-page letter. Never did get it back. Anyway, 1966, we left Japan, we went to Washington, D.C. Somebody told us to go to Peg Andy's meetings. Peg Andy Muir,
Oh,
beloved of Baba, very definitely beloved of Baba. And they were Sufi preceptors, yet I did not know that. I don't remember hearing anything about Sufism, which is probably why they asked Andy to leave the order. Because he was just talking about Baba and not about Sufism. Hey, this is back in 66, things have changed. Anyway, we were sent to the Philippines in 1968. There were no houses at the housing area. There was a long waiting list for housing. So I took the 3 children and spent the time in Sydney. Now, January the 31st, the phone rings and it's Bill LePage. Mother's out. And Bill says, your mother there? I said, no. And he said, well, I have a message for her. I know I have something to tell her. I said, well, tell me and I'll let her know when she comes in. I'll wait for your mother. I said, tell me and I'll give her the message. He said, well, MeherBaba's just dropped the body. I said, oh, okay, I'll give her the message. And hung up. Mother comes in the door, and this is another of these pictures that are engraved, engrams, as the Scientologists would say. Mum comes in the front door. I start walking towards her, about to tell her, and Baba just died! And I'm howling my eyes out. God knows why. Anyway, she said, it's okay, darling. He's really still with us. It's okay. You know, she's comforting me. Anyway, Jerry, of course, was in the Philippines all the time, living in the BOQ, the Bachelor Officer Quarters. And then a house came up. So I went. Now, Adele, when did the Americans go for the Great Darshan? What month were the Americans there?
Who was in?
The last darshan.
It was over spring break. Spring break.
Which would have been March?
March, yeah, something like that.
Okay.
It was March through May, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well,
Several groups.
Yeah.
I got to the Philippines.
April to June.
April to June. Okay. Then the Australians came just before the Americans. So theirs was probably either earlier April or late March. But I got to the Philippines with the children just in time to very quickly hire a maid, Rita. Remember her? You did not like Rita. But I had to get somebody because we were going to... You were nasty to her. Quick-witted daughter I have. Because Jerry absolutely had to go to the Great Darshan. So we were in the Philippines for 3 days, setting things up with Rita, left the children there. We flew up to Delhi, caught a train down to Pune, and stayed in one of the hotels in Pune. And so we were there, and it would have been nice if darn it, darling, I should have bought that beautiful big painting, the photo we have, you know, that's in our workroom. A photo I took when we were at the darshan, after people had left the room, and Baba's chair in Guru Prasad is sitting in the middle of the room, and I took a photo of it. It's a really beautiful photo. The Australian group was just leaving. We got there the day before the Australian group left. We had the mandali to ourselves for a full week. Now, Jerry, I am sure, drove the men mandali out of their mind with all these intellectual questions. And you know how Eric used to hate those kind of intellectual questions. And you talk to Lynn or Terry, and they will tell you how distraught Mayra was, how devastated.
It would have been Terry. Lynn didn't go.
Lynn didn't go? Oh, it was just Terry? I remember nothing of that. All I remember of that entire week in Guru Prasad was being in Mayra and Mani's bedroom. They were trying their saris on me and teaching me how to tie them. I remember nothing else. I wasn't overwhelmed, I wasn't impressed, I wasn't sad, I wasn't nothing. And we did go to the Samadhi, and I'm sure Jerry was very impressed, but I wasn't. Okay, oh God, when we came back from there, our house then in the Philippines was filled with photos of Baba all over the place. In fact, remember that big poster where it says, "You and I are not we but one," that was the first words that my daughter ever read. And I guess she was about 4 at the time, 3 or 4. She stood in front of that and figured the words out. You don't remember a thing about that, do you?
No, I was saying, he was 18 months, he beat me.
Well, that was because I didn't have time to teach you, darling. I'm sorry. I had Christopher in between. I had 3 under 3, for God's sakes. Okay, so from then on, Jerry insisted that we celebrate Barbara's birthday. I bought a little heart-shaped baking can, which you still have, baking pan. I always baked the birthday cake for Barbara. Jerry went shopping for presents. We had a birthday celebration. Do you kids remember any of that? Any of those? Really? Wow, I don't. We went to see Godspell. That was on, and it was with Jeff Milet too, when it was on in DC. And I came back, and we were so excited about it. It was just such a fabulous show. So the next morning, we were saying to the kids, you remember when Jesus said the parable of, I don't know, blank faces? Well, you remember the parable of blank faces. Well, you must remember the one where Jesus said so-and-so, blank faces. It suddenly dawned on me they knew everything about Baba, but they didn't know anything about Jesus. And I thought, well, they're being raised in a Christian society, better send them off to Sunday school, let them learn what the majority of the world, at least in here, lives. Okay, 1976, I got divorced. Where the heck was I going to go? I knew I didn't want to go back to Australia because Australian men were the biggest chauvinist you-know-whats in the world, and I did not want to go back there. I was 36 when I got divorced. Now, when I was in Adak, Alaska, left that out. Adak, Alaska, I was there for 3 days. I marched up. I saw they had their own television station. But all they used it for was children's show on Saturday morning and the news at night. And everything was canned, came in from the lower 48. So I marched up to the station manager and I said, "You need a woman's show and I'm it." "Oh, really?" Anyway, so that was learn as you go. But every Monday I did a yoga class and then I thought on different subjects. And somebody told me afterwards, I completely forgot about this, somebody who I hadn't seen, it was Jerry, the Bible lover, whose name is Jerry. He comes to the Sahavises at some time. Anybody remember who he is?
Watson.
Yes, Jerry Watson. He said, "You don't remember me, do you? Your husband quizzed me on God Speaks when you guys were living in Virginia Beach. I came to dinner one time, and the after-dinner conversation consisted of your husband trying to pin me down on God Speaks." That sounds like him. But anyway, he said he remembered, apparently he'd been in ADAC with us too, he remembered that at the end of every one of my shows, which was 5 days a week, I went, "Don't worry, be happy." So even though I was ignoring him, he still kind of managed to slip in little places somehow or other. And they said that I had, this is really weird, I just remember that, I had a photo of Baba that was on the table next to where I was sitting. Very weird. Okay, so where am I going to go? Well, a friend who I had been acting with, when I had to give up dancing, I took back up to acting. And he'd been acting with me in Adak, Alaska. He'd since got out of the Navy. He was now in Los Angeles doing well, small bit parts in movies. And he said, "You've got to come over to Los Angeles. We need actresses of your caliber out here." And I said, "Oh, no. When we were in Virginia Beach, I had read Edgar Cayce, everything he ever read, everything he ever wrote. He said California would fall into the ocean by the year 2000. I believed him. I wasn't going to go to California at all. But Baba had other ideas. I guess he had the Baba Center in mind. So I hopped on a plane. Mother was there with the boys, stayed with them while I flew out to Los Angeles. I rented a car, knowing nothing about LA. Traveled, I put 1,000 miles on that car in 1 week. And just before I left, I found all the apartments were way too expensive. I found this one apartment that was exactly what I wanted. It was rent I could afford, right opposite a school that Terry would be going to, and it had gum trees everywhere. So that nailed it. I had to take this place. I was coming. I said to the man, the landlord there, I said, "Okay, I'm coming out in September. I'll be here in September." This was mid-August. "Can you save it for me?" He said, "Tell you what, give me half a month's rent and I'll save it for you." Well, years later, when I tried to find an apartment for Robbie, and I saw one, I said, I'll take that. She said, excuse me, I want references, I want this, I want that, I want first month, last month's deposit, the whole bit. So I went back to Mr. Redford and I said, how come you let me, you hold the apartment for me? And I even had a daughter, and your sign said no children. And he said, I don't know, I just trusted you. I said, thank you, Barbara. Okay, so Mother, Terry, and I moved to Los Angeles. I figured I had never lived in an apartment when I had my sons, and they were going to be teenagers soon, and it was not right for me to have to work all the time, raise two boys, two teenage boys in an apartment. So I asked them would they mind going with their father, who was remarrying, and I had vetted the woman. She seemed to be very nice. Turned out that was an act just to give her to her husband so she could marry my husband and screw up my kids. Anyway, she was mean. She was one mean person. Okay, so I had to start getting a job. Michael left the room just at the right time, didn't he? I had been looking, out of the divorce I got $4,000. That was it. And so I went 3 months going to every application after application. I had no experience, I had no references, and no talent. I figured all I could do was be a receptionist and put on a posh British accent, because in '76, American offices like that. Everybody said, oh, I'm sorry, dear, yeah, but you've got no references, we can't do this. After 3 months, and Mother told me this afterwards, she had a little talk with Barbara. She said, Dina has been very good, very cheerful. She's not lost faith. She's going out looking for a job every day, but the money is almost all gone. Please help her find a job. The next day, I was sent to an interview with Kelly Paper Company with a manager. He hired me on the spot. I retired from that after 25 years. That with sufficient money to live very carefully in a 401k for the next 20 or 30 years. So Barbara knew exactly what he was doing when he got me that job. It was incredible. And so much of what I did for the bookstore was on the Kelly paper with their Xerox machine, all that kind of stuff. Now, Mum used to come out every Christmas, and she would always want to go to the Barber Center. She was a friend of Phyllis's. And I don't know what was the matter with me. I would not even drive her to the center. Do you think I could have driven her, dropped her off, and gone on to the movies in Westwood or something? I wouldn't even do that. She had to get Dick Nimler pick her up, Ray Lee picked her up. When they were coming from Pasadena, Lois had to come back this way to pick her up and then go back that way. Really. So, 1981 was probably around about the first time I went to the Barber Center. I had a nice little white car. If you remember, you parked over the other side of the Barber Center on the street there. Well, I was pulling the car around, hanging a U to pick Mum up. There are a bunch of people standing on the pavement there. And I'm hanging a U. It's at night, it's dark, but still, this is a white car. Now, everybody can see the car that's barreling down the street, one of those big old 56 Chevys that have got like a battle tank prow on it. And I didn't see it and he didn't see me. So, gee, do you think Barbara had something to do with that? The car hit me broadside this far behind the passenger seat. I mean the driver's seat, just behind my seat. If it had hit me full on, because he plowed about this far into the car, I would not be here telling the story. Actually, the window, my head smashed against my window and it just about knocked me out. But I could hear Mother, as I was about to pass out, I could hear Mother saying, how do you turn the car off? It's still going. So I sort of picked myself up and turned the car off. And I remember Fred Stankus carried me inside to the Barber Center. And no need to call the ambulance. I was okay. But that was my first experience at the Barber Center. Yeah. I've been getting these kisses all these years. About time I got the kicks, huh? So the car was totaled. I bought a Monte Carlo, which was Avis rent-a-car. Very nice car, I loved it. But just after the warranty ran out, I needed $2,000 worth of work done on it. Well, there was no way I had $2,000 worth of money. So I'm thinking my nefarious brain gets to work. How am I going to do this? What I did was I got a girlfriend from Kelly Paper Company to drive down to Tijuana with me. She drove her car, I drove my car, went to the poorest part of Tijuana I could find, and left the car with the keys in the ignition, unlocked, and walked away, got into her car, drove back. She dropped me off at a parking lot at the supermarket, went in, did my shopping, came out and, oh, my car's gone! Oh, Mr. Security Guard, my car was right here and now it's gone! So they called the police and, gee, there was no broken glass, no sign of damage, no nothing. I must have left the car unlocked. I never do that. So the insurance paid for a new car. I got a $15,000 Buick. It was the most luxurious car I'd ever got in my life. I'm glad that the children just arrived back now and you can come in a little earlier than that. Well, this Buick, oh, I loved it. It was marvelous. I had had it fully 2 weeks, and I had invited my husband. He was in between my ex. He was in between divorces. And I thought, oh, the poor guy, there's no time to be alone at Christmas. So I'll invite him down to spend Christmas with us so the kids can enjoy having their father here. So I'm so proud. I've got this brand new car. I own my own house. I got this, I got that. Nah, nah, nah. Barbie decided, So I pulled out of the parking lot, looking at the pillar behind me, didn't see the pillar here, ripped the whole front fender off the car. So I had to pick my husband up at the ex-husband, up at the airport, with the whole front of the car ripped off. You still drive the same way, huh? Anyway, I took the car in, got to rent a car, it was fixed up. The day I took it out, it was a week, it was in there, they worked on it. The day I took it out, I went to a some kind of a seminar on something or other down by the airport, just off Century Boulevard. I'm in a little side street outside Century Boulevard, waiting for the light up here, La Cienega and Century, to go red so I can pull out. And I'm seeing a car that is coming down. It's coming, my God, he's coming right into me. I'm standing still. I honk the horn, but just then he plows right into me. He had a bunch of people in the car, he wasn't paying attention to me. I take the car back to the same body shop. The guy nearly faints because it is exactly the same as it was before. He said, I just fixed this yesterday. I said, yeah, I know, somebody else did this. So he fixed it, I got the car back. About 2 months later, I'm driving downtown. I am parked at a red light, stopped at a red light, there's a car beside me. Suddenly, I hear this, no, I didn't even hear a noise. I looked in the rear vision mirror and my back window had shattered completely. You know, it was shatterproof glass. And while I'm looking, I didn't hear a crash, nothing hit me, there's no car behind me. How did the window pop out? While I'm thinking this, in that split second, a body falls out of the sky right beside my window. Holy cow! Well, the woman parked next to me said it was a kid on a bicycle. She hit the back of the car. I said, I need a witness to this. My insurance company is not going to believe this. So she pulled around, the police came and said, it wasn't my fault. I was parked there. He said, no, it's obvious. It wasn't your fault. So I tell Mother about this, and she says, darling, get rid of that car. You know what happened, what caused World War I, right? What was his name? The Kaiser Wilhelm was the 8th person that was assassinated in that car, and that's what started World War I. She said, this car is very bad, get rid of it. So I thought, yeah, it does seem a little funny, but I tried to advertise it. I had just paid $15,000 for it. Well, I put $9,000 or $8,000 on it. $8,000, which is what I got from the other insurance company. And I said, no, I would have lost too much money, I can't do that. I got to keep it. So I was, torn between it. But in, there was 83, I took it to Tijuana. Yeah, so it was around about there. I was going to Jung classes. Audrey Bohan, she was having a meeting at the Barber Center on relationships. And I thought, I could do some help in my relationships, yeah. So I started going to her Jung classes and got good friends with Audrey. And I was driving down to one of the Tuesday night meetings, and I just was peak hour traffic. I was in the fast lane. I was a block away from Audrey's. And I just finally made up my mind, because I've been tossing this up and down. Yeah, I know this does seem like it's a message from Baba, but no, I can't lose the car. I can't lose that much money. So I said, that's it, I got to keep it. Right at that moment, the car just stopped dead. All the electronic ignitions turned off. It shut down. Peak hours, fast lane. Everything comes to a screeching halt behind me. But you know, every time Baba picks up a 2x4 to whack me upside the head, he does it gently. I was a block away from Audrey's. There was a gas station right there. So all the traffic stopped, people helped me pull the car over there, I left it there, I walked down to Audrey's, I called my children and I said, please feed the dogs, I'm not coming home. It was Thanksgiving weekend, part of my lovely Thanksgiving. Horrible things happening all around Thanksgiving for a long while. Every Thanksgiving something disastrous would happen. About then, after that accident, that last one that said, okay, I get the message now, Bob, I really will, I'll sell this car. I started thinking, you know, what am I doing here? Well, I didn't know that there was a book by that title, so I couldn't read that. But I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Well, I read Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine. Shirley is talking about Kevin Ryerson, who does channeling. And as much as I thought I knew about spirituality, I'd never heard of channeling. And so I thought, well, that sounds interesting. And then, coincidentally, a friend of mine says, I am having a party at my house for Kevin Ryerson. He's coming. Would you like to come? I said, yes, I would. So I went. It was fascinating hearing him channeling people. One was an 18th century British minister, and one was a 17th century Irish pickpocket. And to hear these voices come out of Kevin Ryerson was really strange. But he said enough to convince me that, hey, these guys knew what they were talking about. So I signed up for a private session. Now, nobody knew me. This woman who, it was sort of a friend, she didn't know anything about me. So nobody had told Kevin Ryerson about me. So I go in there, he goes into his trance, and the British minister comes out with, well, how are you? And I said, I'm fine, thanks. Well, no, I'm not really. He said, it's your doohickey, isn't it? You're worried about your doohickey. I said, my what? Your doohickey, the automobile. That kind of surprised me. I said, well, yes. It's kind of like someone's trying to give me a message. And he said, yes. He said, who do you know that had great physical beauty? He said, it's the front of your car, right? And I said, yes. And he said, sort of the face of the car, as it were. And I said, well, yes. He said, so who do you know that had great physical beauty and was in a car accident and got all smashed up? Oh. And I go, I don't know. Because, you know, when Jerry read all this about Baba, I wasn't interested. I didn't want to hear about it. Maybe, I'm sure Andy and Peggy must have talked about it. Oh, and when we were in Virginia Beach, I also was dragged along to Henry and Keisha Kashaudi's meetings. So I did go to a lot of Baba meetings, but it never touched me in my heart. It was just, I had this knowledge. But I guess I'd forgotten about the accidents because I kept thinking, no, I don't know. Well, Robin had a kidney transplant and she was beautiful, but then they gave her prednisone and her face all swelled up and she wasn't beautiful anymore. He said, guessing games are fun, but this is costing you money. He said, I like this guy. He said, how about that saint fellow you follow? Well, the hair just rose on the back of my neck, and then I took umbrage. Saint fellow? It's the avatar, for God's sakes. And he said, well, whatever. How about that? Don't you think he's trying to tell you something? And I said, well, yeah, but what? What? I mean, what? Can he give me a message, not smash my car up? It doesn't mean that I'm not supposed to have cars. I'm a traveling sales rep. I got to have a car. So what is he trying to sell me? Tell me. Tell me. Now, I had vaguely had this feeling that I should be of service. But, well, I waited tables for a long time, and I did enjoy that, but I'm not all that interested in waiting tables anymore. And then Lois, I think it was you or somebody at the Baba Center started up with the children's mission downtown where they take the abused children.
The service committee.
Yeah, so I volunteered for that. So every Tuesday night after work I'd go and I'd be with the babies. Gee, I like babies. Oh, I left out something, but then I just forgot what it was. Okay, maybe it'll come again. Well, we're not in sequential order there. But anyway, so I am saying, you know, how can I be of service? I didn't know what to do. What do you do when you want to be of service? So Kevin Ryerson's spirits told me that I should be making spiritual movies. Now, I mean, I couldn't have asked for anything more. I'm an actress. I was in Hollywood. I was trying to resume my acting career. And it would have been very nice if it was something spiritual. So he even told me where to go. I said, do you have any names for me? Any contacts? He said, go to the Mary Tyler Moore studio. They are in need of someone like you. So I had signed up as Kelly Paper customers pretty much every studio there was in Hollywood, but in Culver City, but I didn't have Mary Tyler Moore studio. So I did. Anyway, long story short, no. After about a year of trying, I realized that these people, they are spirits on the other side. They are talking to you. But they could tell you they're Jesus Christ just to make you really pay attention. They know nothing more than Joe Blow down the street. All they can do is read your higher mind, which if I had half a talent, and so would everybody else, you could do that yourself. Shirley MacLaine did. Anyway, so obviously I couldn't be doing spiritual movies. Oh, that's right, about the Barber Center, what I left out was, before I started going there, Mother put me on the mailing list, and they sent me the Fly to India Sweepstakes. And so I thought, oh good, I can do my bit for humanity. I'll donate the $35, write a check and send it off. And about 2 months later, I get a phone call from Fred Stankus. I was hoping Fred would be here since he features twice in it.
Yeah.
You know what it's like, if any of you have ever done it, or if it was always Fred, when someone wins and their name is drawn at the Sahavas, you are so excited to call them, you just won the sweepstakes, and they, Jay Palmer, yay! Fred calls me up. I don't know Fred from Adam. Don't know his voice. His first, I say, hello. He's, you've just won the sweepstakes. What sweepstakes? You know, I figured it was a radio station. It's silly. What sweepstakes? The trip to India. What trip to India? Dina, this is the Barber Center. Oh, how lucky. He said, Dina, luck has nothing to do with it. Barber wants you there. Ah, okay. So, that was in 1987. So yeah, I was older than 45, obviously. But for my 45th birthday...
Must have been 86. Because you
Yeah, 86 you won it, we went in 87, right. 86, but then for my 45th birthday, one of my friends had asked Teresa if she would go to the Bodhi tree and pick up a book for me. So while she was there, Teresa saw Much Silence. Well, she brought it home, and I saw it, and I said, what did you get that for? She said, well, you know, you've raised me to believe in Baba, and I just wanted to read about him for myself. I said, oh, well, I'm sure I've probably got a book here somewhere. Because when we got divorced, the only thing that Jerry asked for was the reel-to-reel tape deck, the Lazy Boy recliner, and all the Baba books. Now, Mother had pretty much given him all her first edition Baba books. I mean, she'd always bought them back in those days when they came out. And sent other ones, new ones when they came out to Jerry. I said, sure, you can have them, tip, tip, send them off. And so there obviously wasn't anything. I don't think we even had a photo of Baba. Do you remember ever having a photo of Baba in the house?
Didn't we keep we still have that
Yeah,
same
we have
one?
one, yeah, that's always been on the wall.
Which one?
You were not, we were. We've always had that one.
You guys have got it. Oh,
Well, I have it now,
you've
but
got
it's-
it, yeah.
but it's
But
inside
oh,
the
so
house.
it must have been
We
down
always
in the
have it,
house. Oh, I'll be darned. I don't remember. Anyway, selective memory. I don't remember a lot of things. Oh yeah, so I actually read Much Silence. That was the first Baba book I'd ever read. So when I win the ticket, I tell Terry, and she says, oh, I want to go too. And then I get all very pious, and I say, well, darling, you know, Baba says, I have all this knowledge that comes out just at the right time. Baba says when you go visit him, you only go visit him. You don't sightsee. And it's the same now that he's dropped the body. You just go to the Samadhi and then you go home. She says, yes. I said, what? You go to India just to go to the Samadhi and then come home? Yes. I said, well, I wouldn't. So I got a friend of mine who was in the travel agency business. She booked us the most incredible, and that's another whole story, but it was a fantastic trip. 5 weeks, starting off Hong Kong, Kathmandu, Khajuraho, Varanasi, Srinagar, Jaipur, Agra, Delhi. I allowed 5 days in Meherabad out of the 5 weeks. So when we got down there, poor Terry by this time was very sick with Delhi belly. And so she did get, oh, I didn't bring it, darn it. She did get to go out and meet Mehera. And I've got this lovely photo of Teresa, Mehera, me. A lovely photo of us in 87. We didn't go to 87 because she was going to Berkeley and needed to wait until the next break so we could go on over. So she finally is okay to get out of bed, and she comes up to the Samadhi. Now, I'm in no hurry to go to the Samadhi. This is the first time I've been there since 1969. So I'm just sitting back on the benches. Teresa's standing up there against the wall, and as so many people do, and actually I do it now. Put your hands against the stone and just sort of feel the vibes. And she starts, tears keep pouring down, and I go, oh God, he's just hooked another one. I don't know why I am worthy of him even paying attention to me. Maybe he just likes a challenge. But the thing is, he ain't no dummy, you know. He knows you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And so, all of this time, my entire life, since I met him, he has been giving me kiss after kiss after kiss. And I've just been ignoring it all. Every now and then, there's the whack when Sergeant Barber comes to arrest me. And there were a few other things, but not really noteworthy, and I don't remember them. But anyway, so I think Terry had a nice emotional reunion with Baba. And then, to add insult to injury, we didn't go straight home. We then had a week in Thailand. And we had booked someone, we went up to Chiang Mai. Oh. And we got there, and it was on the 9th of July. And that night, Terry says, oh my God, tomorrow is Silence Day, and we're going out to the elephant place to see the farm and how they work. And I said, so what? Well, we can't talk. Okay, if you want to be like that, we'll be like that. So next breakfast, we come down to the hotel and we're writing notes, and all the people think, this is very strange. They were talking yesterday. What's the matter with them today? But we told them it was for spiritual reasons, and the Thai understood that. That was good. Okay. Then I decided that, well, he did give me the trip to India. I said, this is the least I can do is to start going to the center. So then somebody said to me, would you run for the board? I said, oh no. I hate politics, no. But they coerced me into running for the board. Well, in those days, we had so many more people, whatever happened, than for the 9 slots that needed filling, we had about 12 or more people. So the names were on the blackboard up there, and the people whose names were up who were being voted on went downstairs while the voting was counted. I came up. Oh, in those days, everybody had to give up and give a little talk, stand up and give a little talk as to why you wanted to serve Baba. And you really wanted to be on the board because you felt you could do so much for Baba and the center. And I got up and I said, I hate politics. I've never done this before. Don't vote for me. Sat down. So when I came up and I saw my name was one of the elected people, obviously they needed new blood in there, I burst into tears, which was a very strange reaction. I was furious, but I think behind that, maybe I was emotionally overwhelmed or something, but I was furious. Well, if you remember Gigi, no, not Gigi, no, not that Gigi, JJ, Janine Johnson, Dagi. She got me on the stairs, and another one of these things, engrams, imprinted on the stairs, going down. Everyone's congratulating me, and I'm still crying. And she says, oh, you don't need to do it, Doug. He really wanted to be on the board. He'll take your place. And then finally, I just snapped. I said, no. Nobody knows who I am. They picked up their pen to write somebody else's name, and Baba made them write Dina. I have to do this. That was 1988. This is 2005 and I'm still here. I did quit the board for 1 year because there was one person that I could not take who is no longer in our Los Angeles group. So okay. Robbie died in 1994, my sister. She had the polycystic kidneys. They really came on. Now, this is what Baba did for Robin. She must have been incredibly far along the path because he gave her so much suffering. It's unbelievable. The pain of seeing her mother die when she was 15. The doctor came and took the body away and said, "You're going to be dead before you're 21 too." And then I think she spent the night by herself. I mean, Robbie went through unbelievable horrors. Then there was this person who was traveling with the dance company she was with in Madrid, whom she really, really did not like. But she was in her room one time being very sick. She had to get out to the kitchen to take a pill for the dizziness. While she was there, she saw this lamp come smashing through the window in the apartment across the alleyway, the adjoining apartment, which she knew was where Jeremias was staying. She thought, "Oh my God, what's going on?" So she runs around to the apartment. He's on the ground writhing. He was having a cerebral hemorrhage. She gets him to the hospital. She saves his life. And she feels kind of obligated to stick with him. That was a 10-hour surgery. Now, most people who have a massive cerebral hemorrhage die. Or if they survive, they're a total vegetable. Baba fixed it, so he survived. He was partially brain damaged and partially paralyzed. Really a wonderful burden for Robbie to look after. So they wired me and said, "It's $19,000 hospital bill. We don't have it. Can you get him into the States?" So somehow or other, I don't know how we did it. Obviously Baba again pulling strings. I had an ambulance meet the plane. I had the embassy fly this indigent American, which was Jeremias, back to America, put him in Bellevue Hospital in New York. Anyway, Robbie's story is a whole nother story which deserves a book on its own. But every time, Jeremias came out of it, and then she got pregnant. And everybody said, "You've got to have an abortion because you can't have this baby. Your kidneys are so far gone, you cannot tolerate pregnancy." She said, "No, no, no, I want this baby more than anything." She loved babies. And she said, she always used to say, "If you're going to be sick, be rare." She had the top nephrologist, kidney specialist, and the top gynecologist in New York coming to Bellevue Hospital, which was for the indigents who couldn't afford anything. It was their mission to have this baby be born. When he was born, gorgeous baby until he was 18 months old, and then they found out he was autistic. So Robin is going down and down. She's now on dialysis every day, 3 times a week. She has a partially paralyzed, partially brain damaged husband to look after, and she has an autistic child. And they moved to Santa Barbara because that has a Cottage Hospital was where that was her second home. But they had a very good autistic thing at UCSB. And every time she'd come down to visit me, something bad would happen with the car, and she'd say, "Okay, Baba, I'm coming down to visit your favorite, your beloved one here. So you better make my car last till I get down there." Well, one time at the center, at the old one, they read this, the whole thing was on suffering. And I was so impressed by it, I had it printed out, and I send it off to people who complain about their bad lot in life. And it was the Mandali saying to Baba, "You've got no idea how we suffer. You throw all this at us, and we just have to carry on. This is our life. We just look forward to dying because life is so horrible." And Baba said, and I'm sure you all know the story, that I harass those who I love most. I gouge out the eyes of my true lovers. Anybody else, I throw rose petals in front of them or I would scare them away. I came back from that meeting, I called my sister. I was really shocked. I had never heard this before. I said, "Robin, guess what? Baba loves you more than me." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Because of the suffering." And I read the whole thing out, and she said through gritted teeth, don't you tell me suffering is good for my soul until you've suffered like this. Because her pain was agonizing. She was on dialysis 14 years. Anyway, then they had to amputate one leg. And such was Robin's spirit. 3 days after they amputated her leg, it was Thanksgiving. She was home. She was hopping around on one leg making Thanksgiving dinner for the doctors and the nurses at Cottage Hospital who had been so good to her. And Robbie said to me once, she always had that beautiful big picture of real happiness lies in making others happy. She always had that in her bedroom for many, many years. But she said, you know, Dinah, I wish I had your faith. I wish I really believed Baba was God. And I wish I could love him like you do. Because I didn't love him at first. And I said, Robert, it doesn't matter. He loves you. As obvious by the telegrams back in the 60s. And she could not get it. She just didn't have the conviction. She would pray to Baba, but she was usually threatening him. Like, don't do this to me, because I'm going down to see Dinah. But she was a saint. She was an amazing, amazing person, and I am so privileged to have been with her and have been allowed to serve her.
She was your sister?
No. She was somebody, to have called her my best friend would have been such an understatement. We have been together many, many lifetimes. And she adored my children so much. And I used to think, God, I hope Robbie never has a child, because I could never love her kid as much as she loves mine. And then he was autistic, and but Robbie was incredible. And Baba loved her very much, very, very much. She died 2 weeks after Terry was married, and she was living for Terry's wedding. But the doctor said, if you go down there, you'll come back in a hearse. So Terry went off on a honeymoon, and I took Robbie's dress, her bouquet. I took everything up, and the video that we had done, and played it for Robbie. So that was really wonderful. And then we all went up for her funeral, which was a wonderful, wonderful affair. But everybody who knew Robin knew what an incredible human being she was. Exceptional. No matter how much Baba threw at her, she would be smiling. Kind of reminds me of somebody here. Comes up smiling and loving Baba and carrying on like that. Okay, oh my God, I'm bringing this in under 2 hours. That's incredible, because I've tried to cut it short, because normally this talk is 2 hours. Okay, 1996. I had been to India, first with my husband, then with my daughter, then with Christopher, my other son. He decided that he was going to live in Australia, because all my kids have got dual citizenships. He moved to Australia in 1990. And 1991, I was going to India, and he wanted to go. So I told him I'd meet him in Agra, because I wanted to show him, Terry, we saw, yeah, of course we saw the Taj. And I wanted Christopher to share that too. So we met at Agra, and then went on down, and at least we spent, I think, a week or two down there that time, so a little more time. So Terry got to meet Mehera, Christopher got to meet Mani, with his directness. I don't know if anybody else has ever asked this, but you all know that Mani, when she was young, had very dark skin. She looked like the typical Indian. And then when we got to see her in the 70s and 80s, snow white skin. And so Christopher looked at her and says, do you have the same thing that Michael Jackson has?
Verticulosis.
And she says, I don't know, but And then Christopher says, to cover that up, well, I heard that when you were going to go to Myrtle Beach, you asked Baba, how would you fit in because you were so dark? Couldn't he make you white? And she just laughed and said, no. She said, it's a sort of a disease, like I can't go out in the sun because the sun bleached my skin. So I'm going, shut up, Christopher, shut up. But anyway, he got to meet her. And Michael came in 96, and he got to meet Erich. So we fast forward to Michael's trip to India. In the beginning of the year, I had said, come on, Mike, I'll shout you. I'll pay for you. Let's go to India together in October. You're the only one of my kids who hasn't been to India. Let's go. He says, okay, fine. Now, he only lives down near Venice, but I don't get to see him all that often. And, pardon me, I hadn't seen him for about 2 months or so. And Teresa threw us a farewell dinner the night before we left. Now, Mike had been a little overweight. And so when I saw him, I said, hey, you've lost weight, you look good. He sat there, blood draining from his face. The poor guy was very, very sick. How much had you lost, honey?
20 pounds and 30 pounds in about 2 months.
Yeah. Resting pulse rate of 120. Night sweats. And, honey, would you get me a glass of water, please, John? And he was looking very sick. And I said, well, gee, do you think we ought to go? He had been to a doctor, Beverly Hills specialist, and the doctor said, well, I'll give you a TB test. And if that's negative, then it's job-related stress. So Michael knew it wasn't that because he was his own boss at that time. Yeah. Pardon me. Barbara wants this frog to stay in my throat. Okay, no, Charles is getting it. Thank you.
He's bringing it now.
So,
He's bringing it right now.
we go to India. As soon as we arrive there, we stay the night, thanks honey, we stay the night in the Pune center. Did you, when I gave you that lamppost, did you read Michael's story?
No.
Oh, you should have read it. It was great.
He was going to come last Sunday.
Oh, yeah. He wrote an article about it afterwards, and it was very cute. He said, my idea of a vacation was swim up bars and beaches, and the smell of the diesel fumes, and if this was India, well, I'm ready to go home, because he was very, very sick. And anyway, we travel on to Meherabad, and as soon as we get there, I take him into Dr. Gus. First off, Dr. Gus takes one look at him and quarantines him. You can't go out to Meherazad, what you've got may be catching. Well, after 3 days, they found out it wasn't catching, but they didn't quite know what it was, so they subjected him to masses of trials and tests. I was even surprised to find that Ahmednagar has ultrasound and all sorts of other stuff that they could do there. And it took 3 weeks. Oh, they found out that he was not contagious, so he could go out there. They then had, what are the 2 lab technicians? Jane? No? Honey? What are their names, the lab technicians?
Yeah.
Michael and... Sarah. Thank you. Michael took a sample of Michael's blood, and Gus looked at that and thought, no, that can't be right. That's totally wrong. Do it again. Sarah took it, and she was just so careful to sterilize everything, took it, the results were the same. Sarah said, I have worked in the slums of New York with all the drug addicts there, and I have never seen this much strep in anybody's blood. And Gus was finally, he said, I knew it, I had that clue in the first place. Endocarditis, which is, he had a slight defect on one of the valves of his heart, and all the strep had globbed onto that. And so you could hear as it went over a little click. Well, Dr. Goher heard about that and said, get him into Ruby Hall immediately. Ruby Hall was where Mani went. And so she booked a room, she arranged everything. Now this was 2 days before we were due to leave, go back to the States. So we drive down there, and Aunt of ours was so sweet. She gave Michael a special hug and a talk and some words of support and things. In fact, everybody was really great. And we went down there, he had a private room, even had a bed for me to be in there too. And they did all this kind of testing. He came back from the first test. He said it reminded me of the Alien. They had this big thing that had to go right down his throat, down and under the heart. to look up with a camera. And it was so bad. But anyway, so I called home. I think I called you, didn't I, Terry? And say, tell your father and also tell his girlfriend at the time that he has endocarditis and he's staying here in hospital. So both of those people immediately looked up endocarditis on the website and it says fatal if not treated. All it took was 24-hour drip of antibiotics for 2 weeks and he was fine. And then they gave him 6 months worth of antibiotics to bring back home. And everything cost $600. 2 weeks private room, 2 heart specialists, 1 regular doctor, which was Money's cousin, wasn't it, Michael?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And Michael finished up, do you remember the lines you used to close your article? Tell me them. I don't know.
I forget how it started.
You said, I don't know why Baba chose to save my life. And if I hadn't have gone to India, I would be dead. But from now on, everything I do, I will do with Baba in my heart. So all of them were raised, as Erich calls it, with congenital felicity, which means you got it from your parents. But each of them came to Baba on their own, in their own way. And Terry, darling, don't cry.
Oh, stop.
So we're all a tremendous Baba family. But then Baba kept giving me things more and more and more. He wasn't a paparazzi.
Oh, no.
When was it? 96. I was getting very, very deeply in debt. I was going on jazz cruises every year because I just loved the jazz and I just discovered how fabulous it was. And I went on the cruises. And it was only $1,000 to go on the cruise, but I was running out of money. I had got very deeply in debt. And there was one guy there, his wife had died a couple of months earlier, and I had sent him, what am I doing here, and understanding death, with a little card. And he wrote back, he called me up to thank me, and he said, thank you so much for the books, I'll read them as soon as I can. And, you know, I'd really like to get to know you. Well, as far as I was concerned, getting to know you from a man to a woman meant something that I wasn't interested in. I found out later on the poor guy really meant he wanted to get to know me. Find out more about whatever. But anyway, Baba brought this man, Rolf, into my life at a time when I was incredibly in debt, like $10,000 or $15,000 in debt. He was an alcoholic. Now, I seem to have had a lot to do with alcoholics, starting with my father. One of my boyfriends here in Los Angeles drank himself to death at the age of 46. Wonderful Irishman. And Rolf was an appalling alcoholic. And I tried to, you know, help him. But anyway, he was here for the money. Baba brought money into my life when I needed it. Rolf was a really, really nice guy, a fine gentleman, paid for my fares when I went to Australia on my own, when I went to India on my own, flew me first class everywhere, paid for the jazz cruises. It treated me wonderfully, and I kept trying to get him off alcohol. I think it is time to do away with this. I've come to the end of it. India. 1929, January 29, 2003. You mean I've only got 10 minutes to talk about you? Honey.
Get going.
Okay. I've been going to Amatithi every year because I buy the stuff for the bookstore. At all. I was very happy being single. I was very happy being... Rolf lived up in Northern California, so I only ever saw him when I went on the jazz cruises. So that was all very nice too. And I was very happy with the status quo, but apparently Baba wasn't. Baba wanted something else. So I sat at this table. Now, the second day, he did it for 6 hours. Now, when I spent 5 days with him, that was it. at the Barber Center, at Amatithi. I wasn't with him all the time, just whenever he was out in public singing, I was there listening. And that was it. No sweet nothings, no hugs, no nothing. And somebody said, when we announced our engagement, I had a couple of people say to me, I knew there was something going on there, I could tell. I said, what do you mean? I didn't know what was happening. Somebody sent me a photo, and I meant to enlarge it and bring it up here. He is sitting at the table here, I am sitting here. The look on my face is, I looked at that photo and I thought, oh my God. No wonder people thought things were going on. I had no idea that it was like that.
And you were physically, because I've seen the photo, you were physically very close to him.
Yes.
And the person on the other side was like over there.
I know. How could I? I mean, really, what was I thinking? So, I left and we started emailing each other. And he said, I need to get out of India, but I've got nowhere to go. I said, well, I've got a barber room, you can come stay with me and help me with the barber work, and you can live rent-free. So he did. And that was how we got together. Then I went to India next year, 2004, and I missed Charles so terribly, it was awful. And so I emailed my daughter, and I said, set aside a little girl time, because I'd like to talk to you about the possibility of marrying Charles. She writes back, marrying Charles? I mean, she knew Charles, she loved him, great, but mother, getting married? She has been so against marriage since 1976. How could this be? Anyway, so we have a nice little chat over dinner, Terry and I, when I get back. And did I raise the subject of the ring, or did you? I said, you know, and if we're going to get married, I know where there's a ring I want?
Yeah.
Okay. Fast back 2 years. I was up at a Santa Rosa Jazz Festival, and I was staying with my friend Bailey. My friend Bailey took me to a friend of hers jewelry store. Now, I love tourmalines. This is all different kinds of tourmalines. I've got lots of tourmalines. I saw this ring in the window, in the jewelry shop. The lady who owns it had designed it herself. Diamonds set with a tourmaline.
No rings for 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Aha, I'm going over. People can walk out if they want. And I looked at that ring, I said, oh my God, that's gorgeous, show me. So she got it out, I put it on, and I said, this ring is fantastic, but I made, oh my God, that's a story that I left out. The ring story, not this ring story, all the other rings. Oh, that is too incredible. Well, whoever wants to stay at 2:35 will hear the other ring story, which is probably the most barber thing he's done other than getting me married. I had made a vow to Barber that I would not buy another ring, ever. And so I very reluctantly took this off and put it back in the thing, in the cupboard, in the shelf, the display things. And Bailey said, you know, Rolf will buy it for you. If I tell him, I said, no, I can't ask him. I can't do that. She said, how about if I tell him that you happen to see this ring that you really love? I said, no, you can't fool Barber that way. I cannot get around him like that. I'll go without the ring. 2 years later, when I'm talking to Terry, I had called up. I had this in mind. I called up the jewelry shop. I called Bailey, and I said, what was the name of that jewelry shop? She told me. I called the jewelry shop. I said, remember you had, this is Bailey's friend, remember that beautiful tourmaline and diamond ring you had there? She said, yes, we still have it. I said, you've still got it? 2 years later? And it's a gorgeous ring. She said, yes, we've got it. I said, okay, I'm going to be bringing someone up, and don't sell it to anyone. I think that ring has my name on it. I'm going to be bringing someone up and pretend we've never had this conversation. So, Terry, then I told Terry about this. So the next day, Terry, who works at AAA, as does Charles, she called Charles into her office and says, Charles, sit down, we need to talk. Okay, sits down. She says, now, what are your intentions with my mother? Tongue in cheek. cheek, of course, but, mocked severely. So Charles sits down and says, well, I'm in it for the long haul. Did you actually use the M word, darling?
I don't know.
Doesn't remember. Do you remember? No, I think he said, I'm in it for the... Yeah. And so maybe Terry had brought up marriage or something, and she said, well, being a lovely, straightforward girl she is, she said, have you thought about a ring? He said, well, no. Well, she needs a ring. You've got to have a ring if you're going to get married. And I know where there's one that she'd like. I just happen to know. So, to cut a long story short, she calls Bailey. Bailey, anyway, gives the phone number at the jewelry store. Charles calls the jewelry person and says, I'm going to be coming up to see you, but don't let Dina know. And so she didn't say anything. Well, that's funny. Dina's just called me and said, don't let you know. So both of us were pulling Swifties on each other. And so we're driving up to visit Sue Jameson. And I said, oh, this is kind of, we're going to see Bailey first. We'd seen Jameson, we were driving up to see Bailey. But we were a little early. And I said to him, oh, we're a bit too early to get to Bailey. She said, don't come till noon. Did I ever mention when I was in India about a ring that I'd seen that I liked? And he thinks to himself, got her. Now we're going to do it. So he said, yeah, I think so. I said, I think it's somewhere around here. I think maybe at the next exit. So we got off, we walk in there. So I go in first, he's behind me. And I say, hi, I'm Dina Franklin. I'm a friend of Bailey's. I was in here sometime. Oh, it's still there. Look, honey, look at this. And so she says, yeah, but I'm afraid I can't sell it to you. Why? Well, it's already sold. Now I can't say, but I just spoke to you 2 days ago and you said you weren't going to sell it. And I'm talking, oh. And then she says, to your friend. But I think only the second time in my life was I speechless. There was another couple in the store, and they were just, because I called her up, the owner, to thank her afterwards, and I said, what did those other people say? She said they wanted to hear the whole story. They were flabbergasted by it. But that's how I got this beautiful ring. And very quickly, okay, I can do it in 2 minutes. I had spent a lot of money on rings over the years. I love rings. This one, I think, was like $1,200, but the crowning insult was when I was in India with Christopher, I spent $3,000 on a ruby and diamond ring. And when I got back, I started thinking, I've never donated a penny to the Barber Center, and I've spent all this money on myself. That's not really very nice. Anyway, I was going to India one time, so I took all of my jewelry, which is normally just right out in the open. I put all of my rings, which was probably around $10,000 worth of jewelry, into a big ski sock. And I had this little drawer where my silk undies were kept. Just a little tiny drawer about this big, and I pushed the sock right in the back, put all the undies in the foreground. Went off to India. When I came back, went to the drawer, the socks weren't there. The only people who'd been in the house were Terry and her sister, Katie, best friend, and I implicitly trusted them. They didn't have, either they'd had nobody in the house or nobody came into my bedroom, and I completely trusted them. Okay, the only people who could have taken that were the cleaners that I had had, a husband and wife team whom I had known for years, whom I really valued. He was a lawyer, he was an engineer, she was a lawyer, Mexican. They couldn't get work at home, so they had to come to the States to be domestics. Anyway, I really didn't want to accuse them of it, so I thought the only way I could do this is put a big sign and put it on the tree outside so they will know that it was them. But that didn't, people knowing a $500 award to anyone who knows the whereabouts of jewelry stolen from this house on, and it would be the date that they were last here, which I really didn't want to do because I like these people a lot. When I went to bed that night, I'd said goodnight to the kids, didn't speak to anyone. I went to bed, I had a long talk with Baba, and I said, Baba, I promise I will never buy another ring as long as I live if you give me back my rings. And I just left it at that. The next morning I went to get my undies, and there was the sock. Now, when I first looked for that sock, I thought, well, maybe I forgot where I'd put it. I looked in every drawer, I looked in every cupboard, I searched the entire house, but I knew I'd put it in that drawer. And Baba says he doesn't do miracles, but by God, when he wants something to happen, it happens. And that was $10,000 that I could have given to the trust or to the center, but I spent it on me. And getting this, it not being sold for 2 years, when it was an incredibly great value and a really beautiful ring, that was Baba's thank you to me for that vow never to buy another ring and to put this one back, not to break my promise and put it back. So for that, I thank you, Baba. And I think we can finish here, can't we? We covered everything? Teresa?
So you don't know where that sock came from?
No, nobody got there. It wasn't there when I went to bed. It was there the next morning.
No one came and told you they put it there?
No. What is down here are some of the publicity photos and things that were taken.